welcome to our quilting series where we're making our quilt of memories in conjunction with Irish Country Living magazine. At this stage you should have all of your blocks made. So today we're going to talk about assembling our blocks together, which we're going to do in 3 rows. So we'll just take a look at the quilt behind us and talk about sewing our blocks together. So on the first row, if we just before you do that, actually, if you just lay out all your blocks and have a look at your quilt, you might want to change 1 or 2 of the blocks around. You might want to change your churn dash down to your pinwheel, or maybe move the tumbling blocks in here, put the pinwheel over to that side. Just have a look at your quilt and see how it balances out. And if you need to change your blocks around, that's no problem. Just do whatever you think is best, whatever looks best when it's finished. So we're going to do the first row first. So if we just pin or sew our churn dash to our applique block, this is the little block that we made last week. Sew these 2 together down along this seam here, and that will give us our first row. And then for the second row, we're going to piece our flying geese, this big long strip here in the centre, to our hourglass block. This is one of the early blocks that we made. That would be our second row. And then our third row, we're going to start with piecing the grandmother's flower garden to our hourglass block just across here. So that will give us that piece there. And then we will join that onto our pinwheel block and our pinwheel block onto our tumbling blocks. So now we have 3 rows. And you know what I'm going to say next? We just literally sew them right across the middle. So sew the top to this one, and then our second row to our third row, and that's all our blocks sewn together in one big piece. And the next stage then is to add our borders. You can see in this quilt here I didn't have enough fabric. I didn't have enough of the one fabric to make a border, so I just picked all the fabrics that were left over when I was making this one, and I joined them all together. You can see there, it's all more or less the same colour. It's all in a green. But if you're going to do that, just be careful and keep an eye out for one thing. Try and go around a corner with one piece of fabric, the same fabric. If you are making a border of all different fabrics, I've done it here. You can see it here, and I've just done it across here. And I've done it down in this corner as well. I left that corner just straight. Because it didn't need, it didn't need the 4th corner. It's good balance there, but that's one way of using up your fabrics if you have any fabrics left over. In this one here, however, I just made the border all the one colour. So to join our borders then, we're going to join the 2 side pieces first. No, I beg your pardon, we're going to join the top and the bottom. So just join your border to the top, all along here, just along that seam, and join your bottom border on. That'll give you your top and bottom, and then the longer border goes to both sides. So we put this one on here and one on the other side, and that's the top of our quilt made. And if you've got to this stage, congratulations, that is a great achievement. You'll be so excited to have the whole thing finished. It's brilliant. And then you'll be ready to go on to the next stage, which is quilting. So we're going to talk about getting our quilt sandwich ready today as well. So you can see here in front of me, what I've done today is I've joined 2 tables together to give me enough space to lay out the back of the quilt fabric. So this is our backing fabric. I don't know if you can catch this on the camera, but I have taped this down to the table with masking tape. This can be done on the floor in the kitchen, if you wanted to, if you don't have 2 tables that you can push together. You just need enough space to work on, really. You can do it in a sitting room. If there's carpet, just use pins. I'm using masking tape because I have the 2 tables here. If you had a very large quilt, you need a couple of tables put together, but that's something you can do in a group. You've probably heard about quilting bees. This is something that people can do together. It's great fun. And again, you need a couple of pairs of hands if you're working in a very large quilt, but our quilt is quite small. to be able to manage, you know, with this, just these two tables together. So I have I've put my backing fabric down, right side down. So this is the wrong side that's facing us at the moment. I'll just turn this back. This is the right side of my fabric. So put your backing fabric right side down, and then get your masking tape. And I've actually pulled this. I want this backing fabric to be quite taut, because when you're quilting your quilt, what often happens is the backing fabric can become puckered or can bunch up, and we don't want that to happen. So when you're laying your backing fabric down, keep it nice and taut. I'm just going to stretch over here and maybe stick this down again. That's it. Okay, so that's our backing fabric. So your backing fabric should be roughly about 2 inches larger all the way around than your quilt. That is to give us enough room to work in afterwards. And then we're going to lay our wadding. So we're actually putting our quilt sandwich together at this stage. This is wadding. I'm just going to lay this out on the backing fabric. I should have mentioned also about your backing fabric that you have 2 choices. You can go for a plain background, or you can go for a patterned background. If you go for a plain background in your backing fabric, your quilting will actually show quite clearly. You can just see, if I turn up here, you can see all the quilting lines on your quilt on a plain background. Whereas if you pick a patterned fabric for the background, it's very hard to see the quilting lines. I mean, they're still there and you can still see that texture, but not as clearly as you would if it was plain. So just maybe that's something to keep at the back of your mind when you're choosing your fabric. If you want your quilting stitches to show, go for a plain fabric. If you don't, maybe go for something with a pattern. So this is our wadding. This is the thing that keeps, or the insulation that goes between the top layer and the bottom layer. It's the thing that makes your quilt lovely and warm and cozy, and it also has that extra thickness to show up your quilting stitches. So just literally lay it down and smooth it out, and make sure there's no threads or anything shown on the, you know, this can often be covered in threads because it picks up the threads very easily. Your wadding, there's 2 types of wadding out there on the market. There's a natural wadding, which is made of cotton or wool, or you can choose a polyester wadding. If you are going to choose polyester, make sure and go for a 2 ounce weight. The polyester, and you can go for a blend between, you know, you have polyester and cotton. But I think the best thing to do, there's so many different you know, types out there on the market. The best thing probably to do is to talk to the lady in the shop that you're buying it from. She would know her, you know, what she's selling. She would know her stock, and she could probably advise you on the best type of wadding to purchase. So that's our wadding. That's the middle of our quilt, and then we're going to take the top and lay that down. So wait, let's see, I might do it this way so you can see. So this is the little quilt I've been working on all through the series. You really want this lovely and flat now, and smooth it out. And to prepare your top, what you really need to do is to make sure that all your blocks are pressed, all your seams at the back are pressed in the right direction, and then turn your top over and press the top, and just make sure that it's nicely pressed. I'm just going to stretch across here, pull it down. Okay, so that's our quilt sandwich, our top, our middle and our back. Now the next thing what we need to do is to secure the 3 layers together, so that when we're quilting later on, they don't move. You know, we need them to be fairly secure, so that whether we're hand quilting or quilting on the machine, they don't literally move apart. So there's lots of different ways of basting your quilt. We're going to look at 2 today. I'm going to look at basting with pins, pin basting. or thread basting. Let's have a look at the pins first. So here I just have some safety pins. They're very ordinary little safety pins. You can buy special safety pins for quilting, and they have a little curve here on the bottom, and that kind of helps when you're putting it in. You know, the fabric doesn't pucker as much, but I've been using these. These are absolutely fine. So if you have some pins, you can pin your quilt together. The only thing about that is when you're sewing and when you're quilting later, you have to stop and take out your pins while you're quilting. You can't sew over your pins, you break your needle. But a lot of people now would use pins to baste their quilt. So when you're basting your quilt, start in the center and move out. About every 4 inches would be good enough, will give your quilt a good enough hold. So literally stick all your pins in. I'm going to stick in a few so you can see. There's a curved one now. You can see actually the little curve on that pin there. So about every 4 inches, about the width of your hand, and you can just put them down randomly. If you know what quilting design you're going to use, you can actually put them where it doesn't cross over where you're going to sew later. That's if you're, you know, very organized, you know exactly what quilting design you're going to use. But as I say, just put your pins in about every 4 inches. And you're quilting from the center out. So you can see I'm moving out this way, and as I'm going along, I'm smoothing my 3 layers together, and this will hold my 3 layers then when I'm quilting by hand or by machine later on. So that's basting with pins. The next thing we're going to look at is basting with the thread basting. So I have a needle and very long piece of thread here, quite long. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to take big running stitches across my quilt, and again this will hold the 3 layers together quite well. If you're using thread basting, you don't have to take out any pins later, so you can just quilt over the thread and then just take this thread out later. So maybe that's an advantage of thread basting. So again, we would start in the middle. So I'm going to start here. I'm literally going to take a really big stitch. So I'm going through the 3 layers of my fabric, the top, the middle and the bottom. And I'm going to pull one of these. I'm just going to leave myself enough thread so I can work out from the center out that way later. Just let's get this straight. My thread is actually quite long, it's plenty long here. So I've started in the middle, taken my first stitch there, and I'm just going to work out towards the edge, taking big stitches. So now we are thread basting our quilt. This is a lovely little size to work on. Actually, I think thread basting is probably the best for this size quilt. And it's much easier afterwards, you don't have to take out the pins. So just work your way out towards the corner, like I'm doing here. Find big stitches, making sure to catch all 3 layers. Right out to the very edge. There we are, that's it. And then take out your thread, and then just thread your needle from the center and work out. And the best way to approach this is to maybe quilt straight down this way and like a cross, and then straight across. That will give you a cross, and then from corner to corner diagonally this way. And then I think just once more in between each piece. I think that would be plenty of basting for our quilt. So that's more or less it for this week. We have next week we'll be working with our quilt already basted. It's all ready to go. We'll be talking about quilting and then putting on our binding and our label. So that should be the last in our series to make the quilt. So until next week, thank you very much. Bye bye now.